Have you ever really thought about who owns your stuff online? Your photos, your messages, your entire digital life? The internet has changed so fast, and somewhere along the way, the answer to that question it got really complicated. Today, we're going to take a quick journey through time, from the internet's early days to what's next, to figure out how we lost control of our data, and more importantly, how a new kind of web is promising to give it all back.
So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll dig into the big problem, how the web got so centralized. Then we'll look at Web 3.0 as the answer and get into the nitty-gritty of how it actually works. We'll even meet the key players who make it run, check out a system called DeNet that ties it all together, and wrap up with what matters most, you being in charge of your own data.
All right, so how did we get into this mess in the first place? To really get what the future holds, we've got to look back at how the internet grew up and the huge problem that came along with it.
Remember this? Web 1.0. I'm talking dial-up modems, that screeching sound, pages that took forever to load. It was basically a read-only internet. You could look at stuff, but you couldn't really interact. It was simple, kind of clunky, but hey, for its time, it was amazing.
And then came Web 2.0, the internet we all know today. All of a sudden, that quiet digital library turned into a massive, bustling city. We weren't just reading anymore. We were posting, sharing, shopping, creating. YouTube, Instagram, Amazon, they completely changed the game.
But all that action, all that data, needed a place to live, and it needed a ton of power. So the internet moved into these enormous, centralized data centers owned by just a handful of giant companies. Sure, it made things fast and reliable, but it came with a massive hidden cost. We handed over our data, our photos, our private messages to them.
And this is the Achilles heel of the whole system. When you put all the eggs in one basket, or in this case, billions of people's data in one data center, it becomes a giant flashing target for hackers. One breach, and it's a disaster. And it's not just hackers. What if one of these companies just decides to shut down your account? Poof, your digital life could just disappear. That huge vulnerability is what got people thinking there has to be a better way.
And that better way is what we now call Web 3.0. You'll often hear it called the user-owned web, and for good reason. It's a total rethink of how the internet is built, designed specifically to fix that centralization problem.
The promise of Web 3.0 is actually super simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You control your digital life. Your data is yours, period. It's encrypted, it's only accessible by you, and you don't have to trust some big company to keep it safe. And the best part? The goal isn't to get rid of all the cool, fast, personalized stuff we love about Web 2.0. It's to rebuild it all on a foundation where you are the owner.
So how is that even possible? The magic word is decentralization. Imagine a system with no single boss, no CEO, no central headquarters. Instead, you have thousands of people all over the world who chip in to keep the network running. It's not managed by people in a boardroom, it's run by transparent code and pure mathematics.
Okay, a bossless internet sounds pretty great, but how does it not just fall into chaos? Let's peel back the layers and look at the actual tech that makes this whole thing tick.
At the very heart of Web 3.0 is the blockchain. The easiest way to think about it is like a public digital receipt book that's copied and shared with everyone on the network. Every single transaction gets its own block, which is then added to a chain. Since everybody has a copy of the book, it's practically impossible to cheat the system. That's what makes it so transparent and so secure.
Now, this is where it gets really clever, especially for storing your files. When you upload something, it doesn't just go to one server. Instead, it gets turned into an encrypted jigsaw puzzle. Your file is chopped up into tiny scrambled pieces, and those pieces are scattered and stored on computers all across the globe. And only you have the special key that knows how to put that puzzle back together.
So that begs the question, why would thousands of regular people volunteer their computers to run this network? This quote just nails it. Cryptocurrency is the answer. It's not just some digital money for trading, it's the economic incentive. It's the fuel for the engine that pays people for contributing their computer resources, keeping the whole system running smoothly. So let's talk about these people, these participants. They're not just random users. They play very specific, very important roles that all work together to make sure the network is safe and sound.
First up, you've got the miners. Think of them as the engine room of the whole operation. They provide the raw computing horsepower that's needed to process all the transactions, forge new blocks for the blockchain, and basically keep the lights on for the entire network.
Next, we have validators. Now, if miners are the engine, validators are the security guards. Their entire job is to double-check everything.
They verify transactions and make sure that all the data being added to the blockchain is legit. They're the front line of defense against mistakes and fraud.
And finally, we've got the data keepers. These are the folks who are actually storing those little encrypted puzzle pieces of your files. They're basically renting out their spare hard drive space to the network. The best analogy? It's like Airbnb, but for data storage.
So we have miners, validators, and data keepers. But how do they all work together in harmony? Let's look at a real-world system called DeNet that's actually built an ecosystem to unify all these different roles.
The whole idea behind DeNet is to bring these three essential jobs, the mining, the validating, and the data keeping, all under one roof, working as a single, smooth system. This means your data isn't just stored securely, it's also constantly being verified and maintained by this powerful, distributed network.
But DeNet takes it a step further. They've added this really unique extra layer of security called a watcher node. And this is fascinating because it adds a bit of a human element to all the automated mathematical security. So what's a watcher? Well, anyone can run one of these right from their smartphone. They act like little mobile security patrols. They're constantly checking to make sure enough copies of your file fragments are available on the network. If the number of copies ever drops too low for some reason, the watcher signals the system to create more, essentially adding real-world human oversight on top of the code.
To make this difference in control crystal clear, let's look at a super practical example from finance. On the left, you have a centralized exchange, or CEX. It's run by a company, and crucially, they hold your keys and your money. High risk. On the right, a decentralized exchange, a DEX. It runs on the blockchain, and you and only you control your keys. That's the real difference between asking for permission and having true ownership.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground, from Web 1.0 all the way to the mechanics of decentralization. But let's bring this all home. Why does any of this tech jargon actually matter in your day-to-day life?
This whole shift to Web 3.0, it really boils down to three things: control, security, and ownership. It's about moving away from an internet where you are the product to an internet where you are the owner. So, the final question I want to leave you with is this. If you had total, absolute control over your digital identity, your data, your assets, what would you do differently? What could you build? What could you create? It's a pretty exciting thing to think about.